Welcome back to another special edition of Dirty Napkins. Our next guest is focused on environmental injustices, Heather McTeer Toney. She's a leader in climate change solutions. Coming up, she tells us how Black communities can fight injustices. The table is now set. Now let's get some napkins dirty.
What's up, guys? My name is Tyler McManus. We're here at the Cabin 82 at the Graduate Hotel. Here at the Cabin 82, we serve more elevated breakfast and coffee than most hotels do. We have a full station, kitchen, espresso machine. We keep up with everything, including Starbucks. We are actually modeled off of the Manning family's cabin that they would stay at the Neshoba County Fair. And we are also served lunch from Wednesday to Friday. Got a big menu, continually putting new items, and we're looking forward to showing off some of our products, food menu, and everything. So welcome, guys.
Heather, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here at Dirty Napkins.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, you know, we've heard a lot about you, but a lot of people want to know a little bit more about you and where it is that you come from. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, wow. So I am a Mississippi Delta native. I was born and raised in Greenville, Mississippi. And my mom and dad actually are not natives. So this is an interesting story for some who don't know. My mom and dad came to Mississippi as a part of the voters' rights movement in the late 60s, early 70s. And they were supposed to be in the Delta only for about 2 years. So 40-some odd years later, they not only decided to raise their family in the Mississippi Delta, but truly establish a legacy of giving, of work with the community. And I think of everything that I've done as part of the legacy that they started of service and being a part of the community. So if I were to sum it up, I am a Mississippi Delta girl, I'm a mama, I am a wife, I am a God-fearing woman who just really believes that as we take account of our environment, it's what can really propel us to do some amazing things in the future.
I think it's a really interesting tidbit that your family moved here, not natives, but they had a purpose for service.
Absolutely.
And so how was that growing up?
So I grew up in a household of education and justice. My mom is a retired school teacher and my dad's a retired civil rights attorney. So there was no shortage of education and justice in my household. But it was one that was full of constant learning and constant, I think, humbleness, just being humble and realizing that until all of our community and all of our people are at a place of constantly rising, then there's always work to do. So I was the kid who was at campaign meetings with my dad if he was working for somebody's campaign. I was the one messing up the papers in the bag, stapling stuff wrong. That just, you know, the little kid that was around because you had to be around.
But you were helping.
But I was helping, okay? I was helping and I was learning.
In the mix.
In the mix. And that's the beautiful thing about the Mississippi Delta. It's all family. You don't have to be blood related to be somebody's relation. So I grew up with play aunties and uncles, play cousins, Someone who's familiar to us both, the farmers,
Yes.
Larry Farmer and little Larry, you know, he babysitted me as a kid. All of this was a part of just being in the community, and I think more importantly, recognizing how important it is to learn and grow from every part of your community.
That's
Yeah.
right, and you're right. The farmers, my aunt and uncle, and I am from the Jackson area, but going to Greenville, going to the Delta. My mother was a part of the Delta Blues Festival, so it was everything coming to Greenville and coming to the Delta. It was something coming down there. So excited. But how did being in the Delta turn you to the work that you're so passionate about now?
So I never really saw what I do now. I never saw myself doing what I do now. I work in climate and environment as not only an advocate, but really to speak to environmental justice and community and how we can both solve climate change, but also propel communities of color, especially Black communities, into a place of wealth, into a place of innovation, and really be a part of protecting our planet and our space. If you'd have told me this 15, 20, 30 years ago, I would have said you have completely lost your mind and you were crazy. Because I didn't see Black people as environmentalists. Environmentalists
Very true.
were,
Yes.
you know, environmentalists were the white people who hugged trees and they were vegan and they didn't eat bacon, and that is not Southern.
At all.
That was
Bacon?
not me. That was not me. And I didn't see myself in these images. These were images like singular, one person. And we are familial people, family. You know,
That's
it's
right.
always a group, a gathering. There's joy, there's love. And I wasn't seeing that. So I didn't identify with that. But as I continued to work and serve not only in my community, but I eventually ran for mayor and became the first African American and the first female and the youngest mayor of Greenville, Mississippi. I began to see how even the space and society that I was raised in was very connected to the environment. It was very connected to our climate. We knew that it was going to be the fall harvest season is the same as football season, same as deer hunting season.
Exactly.
You know, you have friends that take out of school, that go hunting. We knew that it had flooded up north, not because we heard it on the news, but when you went over to see the casinos, they were up high.
That's
and you
right.
could see them from the street. That meant the river had swelled. You know, these were the things that connected us to climate and the environment in a way that we had never acknowledged. I also remember driving down Highway 61 or Highway 82 or Highway 49 and seeing men out in fields in slickers, you know, like the raincoats and stuff that you would have on, with a flag and crop dusters coming overhead spraying them. And they were the flag men to identify what row those crop dusters were coming on. And it clicked with me, they're being sprayed with chemicals. Like that was a part of our reality as well, knowing that there were these extreme toxins that were being placed on us as a part of our day-to-day existence. So all of these things, you know, really began to resonate with me, come together, looking at how many floods we were getting, the storms. I said, there's got to be something to this that we're not considering, you know.
Wow. And you said that you were the youngest to be elected as mayor of Greenville. What were the challenges in that and being someone young, just 27 years old, coming in to run the city?
So it was, I think, both the beauty of being young and ambitious and having ideas and creativity and innovation and thinking that you could do anything, which I certainly was and still am to some extent. and also the ignorance of not knowing what you don't know. So people would say, girl, I got shoes older than you, you know.
Yeah.
And not really taking into account that I had passion married with intelligence, married with the will to do it. That was a lot of the drive to get in and see Greenville be great. And at the same time, have to walk through some really tough spaces, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, there were no other young Black women that were in leadership position at that time in the state of Mississippi, especially as the head of one of the 10 largest cities in the state.
Wow.
Yeah.
And do you think that gave you a huge step forward in being appointed by our former president, Barack Obama?
It did, but it also, I think before that, the way that I came to be in that space was through his visit to Greenville and seeing the work that I was doing as a really passionate young mayor, but then through another cabinet member, Lisa Jackson. So Lisa was the first Black administrator for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and she came to visit Greenville on one of her first trips. And she came to visit because there was this young mayor who was talking about water.
That's what I wanted to ask you. Like, why Greenville? Why come?
Yes. I was adamant to talk about water infrastructure. We have brown water.
Yes.
People wanted to know, why is the water so brown? There's some folks that are in Greenville that, again, don't try to mess with their water because it, according to folklore, has medicinal properties. That's what keeps our skin so beautiful, right?
And it looks good, by the way.
There's something about that water. At the same time, it's really difficult from a tourist perspective, right? So these were the kind of challenges that we were thinking through. How can we be creative? Are there innovative ways that we could identify funding to maybe help on the tourist side, but then at the same time protect what was the cultural identity of the community? And that was how Lisa came to visit Greenville. And Lisa was one of the first people who said to me, you know, you're doing environmental justice work, right? And I was like, no, I'm not. I'm just trying to get streets and water and sewer for my community. And she said, no, you're actually doing environmental justice work. That's what environmental justice work is in communities of color that have gone for years without the same infrastructure that allows us to use water, air, land in a way that is safe. So that really opened up my eyes to a lot. And through that opportunity, I led the local government advisory committee for EPA. So I was sort of in a leadership capacity, sort of in a volunteer way before becoming appointed. But I'd like to think that it was part of that led to that appointment.
Why do you think you are so passionate about the environment, and especially when it comes to the Black communities, brown communities?
It is part of our call to action and call to work. I was raised in a faith household and come from a very strong family of not only faith-based people, but a community of ancestors that truly, truly believe that we are responsible for each other. And for me, it's about, this is what God has called us to take care of. You know, there's this idea of creation care, which is how we handle this earth, this planet, plants, animal, people, and then dominionism. You know, you have dominion over, you can use.
That's right.
And I really adamantly believe that God has called us to take care of His planet, His people, in a way that is productive, that is useful, that is prosperous. And we haven't done the best on that.
Right.
But also as Black people, there's so much that we have survived, so much of our trauma that is just like the trauma of the planet. So who better to help heal than those of us who've been through the process and have had to heal? I think the world needs us right now. I think, climate and environmentalists need voices of color to come in and create some of the innovation that we've yet to see. And I think that is true not just for the Black community, but for the indigenous community, the Latino community, all of the communities of the world who've had to experience some of the real trauma. Now is the time that we all need to learn from each other collectively.
So this is what we call a new school tree hugger. And
I still like bacon, right? So
you can't be from the South and not like bacon.
You can't. But that's like the real conversation you have to have, right? Because so many folks are like, oh, no, that's the environmentalist folk over there. They want me to go eat grass, or they're trying to take my hamburger. And can you imagine trying to go into the mother's board of the church and tell them we're not going to have barbecue for, the summer picnic?
Right.
Like, you go get put out.
Yes, that's right.
But can we have conversations about how we are reducing our use of plastics? Because from that same community, that church is also right down the street from a landfill that is growing because we're putting more plastic pollution in it. Or can we talk about how we need to really go back to some of our roots of growing things and not only teaching our children, but learning from our elders?
Right.
These are the spaces that we can and should hold solid conversation, because it's what we know.
That's right.
It's who we are.
That's right.
Right. And there's so much to grow from that.
And when we look at the statistics of things, Black folks are actually polluting less than our counterparts.
Absolutely.
But we are consuming more of the toxins. Can you explain that a little bit more?
African Americans are 40% more likely to be in an environmental justice space and to breathe toxic air than our white counterparts. And there's a reason for that. When we look at historically this country and a lot of the racist regulations, including things like federal redlining policies that told us where we could live and also said what manufacturing plants could be around us. When we look at where the highways were placed and how they separated neighborhoods, when we just take into account all of the placement pieces of our existence and our history, it's no wonder that we are now living in close proximity to these things that are now causing us harm to our health. So more African Americans live within 1 mile of oil and gas facilities, coal-fired power plants, the things that are putting these toxins into the air, just by virtue of what's happened to us in our history, right? And these are the things that we also have to come to account for, because there's some really deep-seated feelings within our community that sometimes we don't even realize they're there. I'll give you an example. We can talk about going out and planting trees, right? Tree planting is a great way to put more oxygen into the air and a great way to revitalize communities, right? But if you've ever sat down and talked to sometimes older people, there's a bit of a hesitancy, even sometimes around the kinds of trees, because we come from a existence where our family members hung from trees. So it's sort of something there's a stop there before we jump right in. Or I'll tell you another one that's even more familiar to folks. Talk about parks and green spaces, which we so desperately need. But when we talk to some of our communities about, let's turn this into a green space, first thing that you hear is, I don't want them thugs out there and hanging out in the park, because that's what they're going to be. Again, it's a part of how we have had to experience these spaces. So some of our work is reclaiming natural spaces, reclaiming the ability to be outside and just be without fear, without retribution, but to be able to experience it just as a part of our reality.
Wow. So not only are you fighting against just the world, the communities, but you're also fighting against our community in a way of kind of convincing, like, we need this is okay, and
Right.
having to coax a little bit.
We're having to go through a transformational shift right now in our thinking, and it's happening. And I don't even think it's a fight as much. I saw the most hilarious TikTok a few months ago. It was a whole trend. I don't know if it was TikTok or Instagram, but it was a trend of Black men frolicking.
Oh my gosh.
Was that not the best?
It was the best.
That was the best. It brought just joy.
Pure joy.
Just pure joy. And all it was grown Black men running
in grass.
Rolling in grass, right? But when we really just encapsulate what that meant, that was freedom, that was joy, that was expression, that was connection with nature, that was health and prosperity, that was the ability to breathe, that was use of one's limbs, that was all of these things encapsulated into just a 30 to 1 minute second bite that was, again, transformational. That wasn't conflict.
No.
That was us experiencing what other people have been experiencing for generations. We just didn't have the freedom to do it.
Right. It was absolutely beautiful to watch.
And everybody else is looking like, okay, why is there this big thing about Black men running in a field? Because we couldn't do it.
And it was odd to see, but so joyful to see all at the same time. Like, why is this such an odd thing?
Why is this an odd thing? And there were all of these videos of, brothers stopping on the side of the road in a field and just going to run. But this happened not more than 5 years after Ahmaud Arbery, who was shot by white men for running. So these connections are deep. They're close, but they are founded in our connection to the climate and environment, which is what makes what I do now, I think, so valuable, so important, and so critical to draw others in to say, no, yes, you are welcome in this space. We are all a part of this collective environment and climate conversation. You too are welcome. Come, let's frolic together, right?
Together. Not just the men, the women, the children. Let's all frolic. Now, so our current administration actually has an initiative going on. I believe it's Justice 40.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that and that initiative.
So the Justice 40 initiative is a mandate from the Biden administration to ensure that 40% of any funding that comes through our federal government goes to the benefit of environmental justice communities. So those can be low income, marginal populations, vulnerable communities, but every single dollar and dime that comes through, at least for the next 2 years, this executive order, it has 40% has to have a benefit. That's a powerful tool and resource. Initially, some folks were like, does that mean we're getting our 40 acres in the middle? Actually, it could be a little bit more.
Oh, wow.
It could be more. Because there's so many agencies within the federal government that we often don't connect to climate and environment. Like the Veterans Administration, ensuring that bases, for example, that happen to be in communities that have a high propensity for environment are also a part of housing, are a part of making sure that there's clean air, part of making sure that soil has been reclaimed, reclamated. There are so many different ways that we could really utilize Justice 40 in a way that is positive for communities of color. It just now becomes our creativity to show the administration, oh, we could do this. Can we envision classrooms in communities that have long needed new school infrastructure, period? We don't even have to put climate on it. They just need new walls, floors, desks. You're talking about schools that have not had any type of renovation since the 40s and 50s.
Wow.
Right? We could utilize now funding to redo infrastructure, because infrastructure and climate resilient infrastructure that is not going to be torn down at the first hurricane, that is a Justice 40 initiative. So there's so many ways to, I think, marry core issues that are key to our community with a undergirding and founding of climate.
Wow. So what's next for you? What are your initiatives that you're working on?
Oh, wow. So I currently serve as Vice President for Community Engagement at the Environmental Defense Fund. What is that? I get to go and work with communities.
Break it down for us, sis.
Right. What do you do? Because that's what I hear most often. Heather, what do you do? So I get to work alongside community groups. That's mayors, faith-based organizations. We have a strong partnership with the African American Mayors Association, with HBCUs, but also with farming communities. So I work with the leadership of these organizations to help develop how they are working in their communities and pull together some of these dots alongside one of the oldest environmental organizations in the world and one of the best known, the Environmental Defense Fund. So it's to me sort of the best of both worlds, because I have access to the scientists, the policy folks, the economists, and we do this sort of trade-off because there's a lot that they don't know about communities as well. So I get to be this expert in that space, and I enjoy that. Well, I'm so glad you asked, because ta-da!
We have a book coming out?
A book coming up.
Okay.
I have a book coming out, actually, Earth Day 2023, so April. It is called Before the Streetlights Come On, Black America's Urgent Call for Climate Solutions. This is for you, ma'am.
This is for me. Okay. I need an autograph.
Yes. But it's full of some of even the stories that we talked about, just connecting climate action to the Black community and how we see it, some of our own social experiences of dealing with climate action. And it is been a labor of love, but one that I hope is filled with some funny stories and anecdotes connecting our social issues, from health to voting, to food insecurity, all of these things, and really giving us some action items to do in the back of each chapter.
I cannot wait to read this. Cannot wait. And tell us again when this is coming out.
So this hits bookshelves on April the 17th, 2023. And you can get it anywhere. All of your local booksellers, Walmart and Target included. Go order it on Amazon, all the places. But I think it is going to be a phenomenal way just to start the conversation. Because so, for example, look, in each chapter, and I think this is going to be hopefully something that's very helpful. Grandma's house is not for sale for the sake of the planet. Climate solutions disguises green gentrification and blue lining. So we talk about it all.
Okay.
But
break
at
it
the
down
end,
for us.
It tells us what to do before the street lights come on. Because you know how we have to be in the house before the street lights come on.
Every time.
Every time.
Every time you ride that bike fast.
And you got to get everything done before then. So climate change is really like the street lights coming on. And there are things that we can do. So each chapter gives us a list of things that we can do before the street lights come on.
Wow.
And hopefully this starts as someplace you can start the conversation in the community.
It's a great way to start a conversation.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Well, guys, I hope you have enjoyed this interview of Heather McTeer Toney. In fact, I hope you have enjoyed this series of this fabulous group of women that we have interviewed. I want to send a special thank you to Oxfam for sponsoring this special series. And listen, guys, we want to be sure we stay in contact with you. Follow us on all social media platforms. That's at Dirty Napkins. You see it down there, at Dirty Napkins. All right, guys, until next time, I'm your girl. It's your host, Lauren Nicole.